On a scorching hot day in a small town, an orphan named Marcus went out in search of food. Suddenly, he saw a 6-year-old girl lying unconscious on the road. It looked as if she had either been attacked or had fainted because of the heat. His heart was filled with compassion, and he rushed her to the hospital. Little did he know, this single act of kindness was about to change his entire life forever. Marcus lived a life no child should endure. With torn shoes, empty pockets, and no family to call his own, he survived by collecting scraps and begging for leftovers. Yet despite his hunger and hardships, his heart was pure. That hot afternoon, as the sun blazed mercilessly over the dusty streets, Marcus stumbled upon the little girl lying helplessly on the ground. Her face was pale, her lips dry, and her small hands trembling. Marcus didn't hesitate. Though weak himself, he lifted her in his fragile arms and sprinted toward the nearest hospital, praying she would survive. At the hospital, the doctors revealed that the girl was the daughter of one of the richest men in the country, a billionaire, who rarely trusted strangers. When the man arrived, he saw his daughter alive, but also saw Marcus and dirty, hungry and dressed in rags. At first, he grew suspicious. He accused Marcus of being part of a kidnapping plot. The guards even tried to push Marcus out. But the little girl, regaining consciousness, whispered his name and told her father how he had saved her. Suddenly, the room filled with tension. Was this orphan a hero or a suspect? The hospital room grew silent as the billionaire stormed in, his face pale with fear for his daughter. He saw her lying on the bed with tubes attached, her tiny chest rising and falling weakly. But then his sharp eyes fell on Marcus, the ragged orphan standing nervously in the corner. The boy's clothes were dirty, his hair unkempt, and his hands trembling from exhaustion. Without asking, the billionaire's guards stepped forward, ready to drag him out. The powerful man's voice thundered, "What is this boy doing here? Was he involved in this?" Everyone froze, unsure of what to believe. Marcus lowered his gaze, his small body shaking under suspicion. He had expected gratitude, but instead he was being treated like a criminal. The billionaire's suspicion grew darker as he questioned the nurses. "Who brought my daughter here?" One of them pointed to Marcus. "This boy carried her in his arms. He wouldn't leave until we helped her." The billionaire's eyes narrowed. "Why? What does an orphan gain from helping my daughter?" The room filled with tension, each second stretching like an eternity. It felt as though the truth was hanging in the air, waiting to be spoken. Just then, the girl stirred faintly and opened her eyes. Her small, weak voice broke the silence. "Papa, he saved me." She reached out her tiny hand toward Marcus, her eyes filled with innocence and trust. The billionaire's face softened, but his heart still wrestled with doubt. He turned to Marcus directly. "Tell me the truth. Why did you save her? You could have just walked away." The boy's lips trembled as he gathered courage to speak. Everyone in the room leaned closer, desperate to hear his answer. Marcus finally raised his head, his eyes shining with tears. His voice cracked, but his words carried the weight of his entire life. "Because I know what it feels like to be helpless, and I couldn't let her suffer the way I have." The room fell utterly silent. The billionaire, who had built empires with money and power, stood frozen by the boy's honesty. For the first time in years, his hardened eyes filled with tears. And in that silence, the truth was revealed. This orphan, who had nothing, was richer in heart than anyone in the room. The billionaire stood frozen, staring at the frail boy who had risked everything. For years he had believed money could buy loyalty, respect, and even love. But in front of him stood an orphan who owned none of these luxuries, yet had shown the purest form of humanity. The billionaire's chest tightened, and his lips quivered as memories of his own lonely childhood resurfaced. Slowly he walked toward Marcus, his footsteps echoing in the silent room. The guards stepped back, uncertain of what their master would do next. The girl smiled faintly, clutching Marcus's hand as if refusing to let go. And in that fragile bond, the billionaire saw something money could never create. The billionaire knelt down in front of Marcus, his pride melting away. For the first time in decades, he looked not as a powerful man, but as a father who had nearly lost everything. He placed his trembling hand on Marcus's shoulder and whispered, "You saved my world." Marcus's eyes widened, unsure if he was dreaming. No one had ever thanked him. No one had ever seen him as valuable. Tears rolled down his cheeks, mixing with the sweat and dust from the streets. The little girl leaned closer to Marcus and whispered, "Don't cry. You're my hero." The room filled with an energy no riches could match, so the power of gratitude. Days passed, and Marcus remained by the girl's side until she fully recovered. Doctors, nurses, and even strangers admired the orphan who had saved a billionaire's daughter. The story spread through the town, reaching newspapers and television screens. People who had once ignored Marcus now spoke his name with respect. But Marcus himself remained humble, still wearing his same old clothes, still walking with the same shy steps. He had never sought recognition. His only wish had been to help. Yet destiny had chosen to reward him in ways he could never imagine. And the world was about to witness a transformation no one expected. One evening, the billionaire invited Marcus to his mansion. The boy hesitated at the enormous golden gates, afraid he didn't belong. But the little girl rushed out, pulling him inside with laughter and joy. The mansion, filled with chandeliers and luxury, felt unreal to Marcus. He stood quietly, his eyes wide, afraid to even touch anything. Then the billionaire placed a hand on his back and said, "This is your home now." Marcus's knees weakened. The weight of years of loneliness suddenly lifted. In that moment, he was no longer just an orphan, he was family. From that day on, Marcus's life changed completely. He went to school, wore clean clothes, and sat at a table where food was plenty. But more than the comforts, he found something far greater: love and belonging. He studied hard, determined to honor the gift he had been given. The little girl proudly introduced him everywhere as her brother. And the billionaire, once hardened by wealth, learned kindness through the boy's example. Every night, Marcus would whisper a silent prayer of gratitude. He vowed never to forget the streets where he had once stood hungry and alone. Years later, Marcus grew into a young man admired by thousands. He used his education and fortune not for luxury, but to help other orphans. He built shelters, funded schools, and gave children the hope he once longed for. Every act of kindness he performed carried the memory of the day he saved a little girl. And every time he looked at his sister, he was reminded of how fate had changed his path. The billionaire often told their story, his voice breaking with emotion each time. It was no longer a tale of wealth and power, but of compassion and second chances. And as millions heard their story, hearts around the world were left in tears.